We'll be creating a responsive navigation bar. This is an example of what we're doing with the CSS code and the JavaScript code. So when the page resizes, we see the icon menu. If that gets clicked, that's going to open up all of the different tabs that we have for our menu. So it's fully responsive. When we go larger again, they're going to close off and they're going to go back to the horizontal alignment. And the smaller screens have a vertical alignment. And the button up here, the menu button, allows you to open and close the navigation bar. Let's start by setting up the page elements. So I've got the web editor opened on the left-hand side, and that's got a live preview on the right-hand side in the web browser. I've also got the developer tools opened. So this is a feature of Google Chrome. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start adding in some of the document tags. So first off, we're going to declare the document type. So setting that as HTML, and then the HTML opening and closing tags. And we need the head opening and closing tags. Let's go ahead and we're going to add in a title tag. And this is going to be just the nav menu, as we're going to be focusing on creating a responsive navigation menu. Let's go ahead and we're going to add in the rest of the HTML tags. So setting up the body tags. And then within the body, we're going to use the nav tag. Give this a class of navbar so that we can select it using the CSS style sheet. And then we'll create a list of navigation items, just using the hash for now as a placeholder. So you can add in as many of the HTML hyperlinks as you want, and each one will be a separate tab within the menu. And just add the typical ones that you might expect from a website. So I'm just going to duplicate the home, and we'll set up a few different ones here with some different titles. So typically you'd have an about section. You might also have something for services. There's also usually a contact area for a website. So let's add in a couple more. So we've got quite a few here that we can work with. There's a blog, and then we might also have a portfolio or something like that. So that gives us our navigation bar. And there's just the basic HTML right now that's being output into the page. I can make it a little bit bigger to 150%. So we haven't added any styling in yet. So now we're going to select that and add some styling in. Now we can link to a style sheet, or we can just do it directly within the page. So in this case, because we're just making a one-page website here for demonstration purposes, we'll add it all within the style tags. So let's go ahead and we're going to select the navbar. And we want to update the navbar. So let's set a background color for it. The background color, so it stands out a little bit off the rest of the page content. And we're going to be setting the styling so that we can see the contents of the navbar. So select that as well. And these are all anchor tags. So we can set the color of these. And this, right now, I'm just going to set it as a light color so that we can see it. And of course, you can update these as needed. Let's get rid of the underline with the text decoration. Set that to none. Also make the font size so slightly bigger font size, and save that. So that gives us more visible, and I can bring it back down to 100%. So we also need to add in some padding to it so that there's spacing between the different items, and we'll just add in padding like that. So there's a navigation bar. Let's do a float of this, and we'll float it left and do a display and display block of it. So there's our navigation bar, and we've got the items there. Notice that the background, we're not seeing the background color right now. Go into the nav bar. Let's check and set the overflow, and set the overflow to hidden. And that will bring the background color back in, because we had set it to block, and because this is just for the anchor tags. So that would have set the block size, and we need to overflow hidden, so that blocks in the size of the elements. You can also set up the text align and do a center align of the text within their own elements. So it's looking a little bit more like a navigation bar now. So let's set up the hover effect on each one of the elements. So setting up hover, so whenever we go over the element, we're going to adjust the background color so it gives it a hovering type effect. And also we'll adjust the color and set the color to be black. So it's going to do a lighter effect, and then we're also updating the text to be a darker effect. So that's what the hover does, and this is where it really brings in a lot of the magic there, that we're able to interact and make it feel like more of an interactive element. We're going to add in the media screen because we want to make a responsive navigation menu. So right now it's not responsive when you resize it. We're not stacking the page elements. So we're going to break it at 600 pixels, and you can adjust this as needed. So what's going to happen is that this is actually going to look different depending on the size. So within the menu, let's go ahead and we're going to add an icon. And this icon is going to be a clickable icon that's going to open and close and toggle the navigation bar. So also give it a hash and give it a class of icon. We use the HTML code for an icon, so that's added in there. So there's our menu item, but we only want the menu item to show whenever we're resizing the screen. So before we resize the screen, select the nav bar icon, and we're just going to do a display none of it. So set that to display none, so it's not going to be visible on the page, and we only want to show it whenever the resize is being done, and display it as block, so make it visible. And also, we're going to float it over to the right hand side. So see what happens. We resize. There's our navigation bar item, our menu item. And also let's hide the other items within the navigation bar. So if they're anchor, not, and first child, this is selecting them. So we're just going to do a display and set that to display none. And we want to have the navigation bar, our menu item, as the first item. And so what we want to do is we want the menu to stack if it has a class of responsive. And we'll use JavaScript to toggle that class. So if it's responsive, then we're going to get it to stack. So select the nav bar and get the responsive element. Let's position it relative. And then also for the navbar responsive icon and anchor tags. So for the icon, set that to position absolute, and we can set it to right 0 and top 0. And for the navbar responsive anchor tag elements, we'll set the float to none, display to, and text align to left. So now when we resize, there's our navigation bar, and now it's stacking because we're adding in the responsive. And we'll do that responsive. We're going to add that in with JavaScript. Let's remove out the responsive class. So now when we resize it and it's smaller, we want to have it stack, and we're going to be able to click that. And with JavaScript, we're going to add in the responsive class, which will make the navigation bar a responsive navigation bar effect. So our icon, we can use the documents and query selector, selecting the element with a class of icon. And then for the icon, do an on click of the icon. So it's going to invoke this anonymous function. And within the function, let's select the element, and using the document query selector, selecting the elements, and this is going to select the first one with a class of navbar. And if the element has a class of navbar, then we'll take the elements and class name, and we're going to add to the class name, we're going to add the responsive class to it. And don't forget to keep a space in there where it's going to open up the menu and allow us to close the menu as needed. So there's our responsive navigation bar using JavaScript and CSS styling. And if you do add in any additional items within it, that's automatically going to get managed within the responsive format. And do try it out to see how that works for you. You can readjust the sizing of the elements within the navigation bar, the text size, if you need to have more items within the navigation bar,